Hey, what's going on, guys? This Saturday is UFC Vegas 86, Jack Hermansson versus Joe Pyfer, and this is going to be my full card predictions. I'm going to go through every single fight on the card and give you a quick breakdown and prediction. Starting off with the first fight of the night, we have Daniel Marcos versus Aoriqileng. This is a matchup where you have 15-0 Daniel Marcos, who's had his last 3 fights canceled. Coming off that win over Davey Grant, where it was a split decision. Some people thought he lost that fight. He wasn't very aggressive in that fight. And that was 6 months ago. And then you have Aoriqileng coming off a win over Johnny Munoz Jr., who was like a disgrace to the sport, trying to grapple nonstop. Had a little bit of success in that fight. I think in the first round, he had some success. But outside of that, he was just rolling around the ground, looking to try to catch Aoriqileng in a submission. And then before that, he got KO'd by Amin Zahabi. And Aoriqileng, that's the only time he's ever been KO'd. And basically, this is a fight where you have Daniel Marcos, who's very well-rounded, not really great anywhere, but not really, he's not even mediocre everywhere. He's just decent everywhere. And you have Aoriqileng, who has good striking, doesn't have the best takedown defense, has trouble with grapplers, likes to press forward, kind of keeps his hands a bit low and looks for big power shots. And I just think Daniel Marcos is just too technical for that. I think Daniel Marcos can win on the feet with his technical striking. I think he can mix in the leg kicks. I think he can be aggressive. We've seen him be aggressive in the past, just not against Davey Grant. And I think in this fight, he'll probably be a little bit more aggressive because I think Aoriqileng leaves some more openings. But also, I think Marcos can mix in the grappling. I think he will mix in the grappling. So for this matchup, I'm going to go Daniel Marcos, 30-27 decision. I think he gets it done. He's just a more well-rounded fighter. He'll mix in his grappling. He'll have success with his striking. And unless Aoriqileng finds like a brutal KO shot, I think Daniel Marcos gets it done via decision. Moving up on the card, we have Hyder Amil versus Fernie Garcia. Hyder Amil was supposed to fight like 3 different opponents on this card. I think it was Nurembeke and somebody else. I can't remember who it was. They got canceled. They get in Fernie Garcia. You have Hyder Amil coming off Dana White's Contender Series. We know the UFC likes to set these guys up for success. And that's why they're booking against Fernie Garcia, who's on a 3-fight losing streak. Lost to Journey Newsom, lost to Brady Highstand, lost to Rinyan Nakamura in his last fight 5 months ago. And, honestly, this is going to sound crazy because I think it's kind of an easy pick to go with Hyder Amil. It would not shock me if somehow Fernie Garcia pulls this off because Hyder Amil, coming off Dana White's Contender Series, looked like a total amateur. Like, he had okay grappling. He was taken down in that fight, I think, controlled in the first round. The striking wasn't all that impressive. He had okay offensive grappling, but it's just, he's not that very good. He's not that good at all. And, Fernie Garcia, he wants to strike, has some pressure, can take some shots, but he can't grapple to save his life at all. So neither one of these guys is particularly a great grappler, but I just think Hyder Amil probably wins this fight with his grappling. Even though he's preferably a striker, I think he out-grapples Fernie Garcia. We've seen Fernie Garcia taken down and controlled in multiple fights. You have Hyder Amil, undefeated, 8-0, coming off of Dana White's Contender Series. You have Fernie Garcia taken in on short notice to potentially save his UFC career. Might have already been cut and we didn't know it. I think Hyder Amil goes out there, outstrikes him probably, but it could be close on the feet, but I think he mixes in the grappling. And Fernie Garcia, I don't think he trains takedown defense at all. So I am going to go with Hyder Amil. I'm going to say 30-27 decision. I don't think he finishes Fernie Garcia. Fernie Garcia is actually pretty durable. Didn't get finished in any of his last 3 losses. And he came off Dana White's Contender Series as well. Got a KO win there. But I'm going Hyder Amil, just win with his grappling. I'm going to say 30-27. Moving up on the card, we have Zach Pauga versus Bogdan Guskov. This is an interesting matchup. I could see this fight going really both ways. You have Pauga, who primarily likes to clinch, primarily likes to grapple, coming off a loss against Modestas Bukauskas. It was a close fight, mildly close fight, but just really couldn't get the grappling going. Hurt him early in the first round, but just couldn't find a finish there. Coming off a win over Jordan Wright before that, not very good competition. Then you have Bogdan Guskov coming off a loss against Volkan Ozdemir, where he looked okay early, landed some shots, but got out-grappled in that fight, and then also gassed. I mean, he was gassed like 2 minutes in, right before he got finished. He got clipped badly and finished via rear naked choke. And I know a lot of people are looking at like the name, and they're, he's from Russia. He's probably going to beat Zach Pauga, who's 35, which is honestly a factor. You have 35 years old to 31 for Guskov. But I'm going to go Pauga. And I thought about picking Pauga via submission. And then I thought about maybe I'm picking by decision. But honestly, the way I watched it back twice. Because I was like, am I mistaken this? Is he just rocked and he's not actually gassed? Guskov does not have a good gas tank. He's just this big power striker who hasn't even fought the best level of competition. I mean, outside the UFC, He's fighting guys who are 4-1, 7-2, 5-2, and that's 3 out of his last 4 fights outside the UFC. Comes in against Volkan Ozdemir, gets a big test, gets starched there, and doesn't have a good gas tank. Now, I think maybe you could go out there and start Zach Pauga like, you had Usman in the, coming off of Dana White's Contender Series, brutally KO Pauga. But Pauga's come down a weight class. I think he's more athletic. I think he has a way better gas tank. He showed a decent gas tank against Bukauskas. And I think unless Guskov gets a first-round KO, if I was picking Guskov, that's how I'd pick him. I think Zach Pauga gets it done, and I don't trust Guskov's cardio at all. So I'm going to go Zach Pauga second-round KO. I think Guskov gasses himself out, and I think Pauga hurts him on the feet, finishes him off with a ground and pound. Moving up on the card, we have Jeremiah Wells versus Max Griffin. Honestly, this isn't really, I don't feel like this is that hard of a fight to pick, because Max Griffin's been around forever. He's been in the UFC since 2016, but he's just been one of those guys who's like, a top 25 guy, maybe like a gatekeeper for the top 25. He's just mediocre everywhere. You look at his last few fights. He fought Magny not that long ago. He fought Magny a little under 2 years ago. Was getting out grappled in that fight. Now, that was a kind of a close fight. After that, split decision against Tim Means. After that, lost to Michael Morales. And, Michael Morales, I know he's kind of an upcoming prospect, but Max Griffin just isn't that good. He's 38 years old. I know Jeremiah Wells is 37, coming off a loss against Carlston Harris, but he was winning that fight. He was dominating that fight with the grappling, and he ends up getting caught in an anaconda choke. I have to go Jeremiah Wells in this fight. I think he easily outgrapples Max Griffin. I think Jeremiah Wells is a better grappler than Neil Magny. I think he'll have success taking him down. I think Jeremiah Wells has showed a good chin, even against like Matthew Semmelsberger, where he got clipped up quite a few times and was able to recover. And I think Jeremiah Wells is just going to be the way better grappler. He has good enough striking to hang on the feet with Max Griffin, and has nasty power that Max Griffin has to be worried about as well. So I'm going to go with Jeremiah Wells. I'm going to say second round rear naked choke. I'm going to say he takes him down, controls him, beats him up probably in the first round for like a half of the first round. Second round, gets an early takedown, works his way to the back, and finds a rear naked choke in the second round. Moving up on the card, we have Devin Clark versus Marcin Prachnio. This is actually a difficult fight to pick. Both guys kind of trading wins and losses in their last few fights. Devin Clark coming off that loss against Kennedy Nzechukwu. Fight before that, beat Da Ung Jung. Fight before that, lost to Azat Mirzakhanov. Fight before that, beat William Knight. You get the point. And then you have Prachnio coming off a loss against Vitor Petrino, where he got out-grappled and submitted, but it wasn't that impressive win for Petrino. And then before that, a win over William Knight. Both guys are kind of old, 33 to 35. Prachnio's 35. And honestly, Clark is just one of these kind of gritty guys who's just sloppy on the feet, who wants to grapple, wants to wrestle, has a low fight IQ. You hear his dad in his corner yelling at him at the top of his lungs every single fight, but he does have big power. He does have big power. And then you have Marcin Prachnio, who has okay takedown defense. He showed decent takedown defense in the Petrino fight early, and he just has a super kick-heavy striking attack. And I think unless Devin Clark clips him on the chin and puts him away, I think most likely Prachnio probably just outstrikes him from range. But I really could see Devin Clark out grappling him, in the second and third round as Prachnio starts to get tired. But Prachnio, he has decent footwork. I hate picking Prachnio, honestly, because he did get finished by Sam Alvey. He got finished by Sam Alvey, but that was a while ago. I think he's improved since then. And I don't think Devin Clark's all that good. So I'm going to pick Prachnio. Very reluctantly pick Prachnio. I say he's going to win a 29-28 decision, but I could see Devin Clark out grappling him and just winning a decision himself as well. But I'm going to go Prachnio 29-28 decision, outstriking him from range, primarily with like leg kicks, body kicks, and just circling around the cage. So, maybe Devin Clark gets it done with his grappling, but if he does, it's probably a 29-28 win for Devin Clark as well. Moving up on the card, we have Loma Lookboonmee versus Bruno Brasil. Honestly, this is an easy fight to pick. I mean, Bruno Brasil, she wants to strike. She's mediocre with her grappling, and Loma has pretty good grappling, has decent striking. She can be out-grappled a little. She can be taken down and controlled a bit. I think it was in a Lupi Godinez fight she was taken down. But her last few fights, she's coming off a win over Elise Reed, where she got a rear naked choke, coming off a win over against Denise Gomes. You have Bruno Brasil coming off a win over Shauna Bannon and a loss against Denise Gomes. I know MMA math doesn't always work, but I think Bruno Brasil has to keep it standing. But even if she keeps it standing, I think Loma has good enough striking and heavy hands. Honestly, Loma prefers to strike. And I just think Luma's better than her everywhere. I think she can out-grapple her. I think she can out-strike her. I don't trust Loma's grappling all that much because we've seen her, I think even in the Elise Reed fight where she did win with her grappling, she was getting reversed and ended up on bottom a couple times. And her fight IQ is a bit of a question mark. But I just don't think Bruna Brazil's all that good. I think Lookboonmee outstrikes her, outgrapples her. And I'm going to go Lookboonmee. I'm going to say 39-27, or not 39, I'm sorry. 30-27 decision is what I'm going to go with. I think she wins all 3 rounds. I think she wins on the feet. I think she lands some nasty leg kicks. I think Bruna Brazil is going to be circling around, trying to be more technical and try to land the just shots at range. And I think Lookboonmee is going to be chopping the legs, slowing her down, beating her up, mixing in the grappling, having some top control, even if Bruna Brazil scrambles out because they're both kind of mediocre grapplers. But I think Lookboonmee has an advantage. So I'm going to go Lookboonmee 30-27 decision. Moving up on the card, we have Bolaji Oki versus Damir Hadžović. Hadžovic's 37 years old. Oki is 28, coming off of Dana White's Contender Series again. You know, they like to set these guys up from Dana White's Contender Series for success. And Oki has fast hands. He throws a lot of hooks. He likes to counter. He has nasty body shots. He shows some nasty body shots on Dana White's Contender Series. And also has really good leg kicks as well. And I think Damir primarily wants to strike. He's coming off a loss against Marcin where he got out grappled. He primarily likes to strike, but he's just too old and too slow, I think. Even if he has a little bit of a technical advantage against Oki, I think he's just too slow, and he can be out-grappled as well. His grappling has always been his weakness. So this is kind of a similar matchup where they both kind of like to counter-strike, but I just think Oki's just way faster, more powerful, and I think Oki's going to get him out of there in the first round. I think Oki gets a first-round KO. I think Hadžovic's just too old. He's lost 3 out of his last 4. He's lost to guys, that aren't that great. I mean, not horrible competition. Marcin, Renato Moicano, and Christos Gigas, or Yagos, I think is how you pronounce his name. But he's also been kind of inactive, you know what I mean? Like, his last fight was a year and a half ago. Fight before that, 2 years and 7 months ago. Fight before that, almost 4 years ago. So Damir Hadžović hasn't been that active. He's older. He's slowing down. He wants to strike. Oki wants to strike. Oki's faster, more powerful. So I'm going to go Bolaji Oki, first round KO. Moving up on the card, we have Trevin Giles versus Carlos Prates. I think is how you pronounce his name. Yeah, I think it's Carlos Prates. This is an interesting matchup. It's kind of hard to pick. I mean, honestly, it's not really that hard to pick. I think Trevin Giles has shown moments where he's been decent, even looked okay early against Dricus du Plessis before he got KO'd, but that was 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. He's trading wins and losses, got submitted by Gabriel Bonfim in his last fight, fought Preston Parsons to a split decision fight before that. He's coming down from 85. Well, he's came down from 185, but he's a former 185er. And you have Prates coming off of Dana White's Contender Series. I know I keep mentioning that, but the UFC makes these matchups to kind of set them up. I think Giles is a little bit underrated, considering basically people think he's a bum at this point. He has some decent movement, has some decent striking, and his grappling is subpar. He doesn't have great takedown defense, and I think Prates is just kind of better everywhere. I see Prates getting this done, and honestly, Giles gets clipped up quite a bit. And you look at the level of competition he's fighting decent level of competition. I mean, Bonfim, I know Bonfim was kind of exposed by Dalby in his last fight, but Michael Morales, up-and-coming contender, Dricus du Plessis, now a champion. He fought Roman Dolidze, has a win over Roman Dolidze in the past. I think Trevin Giles could maybe get it done with his striking and footwork, but I think most likely Prates lands on the feet, mixes in the grappling, and I'm going to go Prates second round KO. I think Giles' chin is just way too open. His hands are too low. I think with the threat of the grappling as well is going to be a factor in this fight. And I just see Prates going out there and landing a big shot in the second round and putting him away. Moving up on the card, the first fight on the main card, we have Rodolfo Vieira versus Armen Petrosyan. This is a fight that was rebooked. I believe it was canceled. I think it was like a month or 2 ago. But this was rebooked. This is a super easy fight to pick. I'm going Armen Petrosyan. Armen Petrosyan is he's kind of like people always throw around the term dark horse. I think Armen Petrosyan could be like a dark horse of the middleweight division. He's a guy that I believe is going to be a contender in the top 15 very, very soon. And I think this is kind of, a good test for him against Vieira, who has really good grappling. But Vieira's just not good on the feet. I mean, you're looking a couple fights ago against last fight, Cody Brundage. I'm always messing up his name because I constantly want to call him Cody Brundage. But Cody Brundage, he was getting clipped up and hurt by Cody Brundage in that fight. And Cody Brundage only lost because of his bad fight IQ. Fight before that, lost to Chris Curtis, where he got stuffed over and over again, and Curtis just had the crisper boxing. Fight before that, had to win over Dustin Stolfus. That doesn't really mean all that much. Fight before that, lost to Anthony Hernandez. Where Petrosyan coming off a win over Christian Leroy Duncan. coming off a win over AJ Dobson, and coming off a loss against Caio Borralho, where he got out grappled, but he had moments in that fight, and that wasn't, like, even there was times where he reversed or stuffed takedowns and ended up on top of Borralho. And I think he's improved much since then. That's a year and a half ago. So I think Petrosyan, just much more technical striker. I could see Petrosyan finishing him, but Petrosyan's not really known for his power. And I also think Vieira, will be able to absorb some of the shots from Petrosyan. I think Petrosyan's going to be a little tentative early because of the threat of the takedown, because of Rodolfo Vieira, excellent BJJ, big and strong, looking for the takedown. I think Petrosyan's going to be using his footwork early, just sticking and moving. And I think Petrosyan just outstrikes. So I'm going to go Petrosyan 30-27. I could see him getting like a late second round, early third round TKO. But I just think Petrosyan's going to be worried about that threat of the takedown because Vieira does have an advantage, a massive advantage on the ground. But I think Petrosyan easily wins this fight. So I'm going Petrosyan 30-27 decision. Moving up on the card, we have Michael Johnson versus Darrius Flowers. This should be a fun matchup. I know this isn't the greatest card stacked with compelling matchups, but Michael Johnson, Darrius Flowers should be very fun while it lasts. And what I truly think this comes down to, Michael Johnson has some of the fastest hands, especially in his prime in the UFC. I mean, he's unbelievably fast on the feet, but he's so inconsistent. His grappling, he doesn't have great takedown defense. And then on top of that, he's getting old. He's 37 years old. And then you have Darrius Flowers, 29 years old, has decent grappling, has very fast hands himself, and has good power as well. I know he's coming off a loss against Jake Matthews, but I think he took that fight on short notice. And he tried to go for the finish early and kind of gassed out. Wasn't having a whole lot of success finding and landing his shots. And then you have Johnson coming off a KO against Diego Ferreira. Win against Mark Casey before that. And a loss against Jamie Malarkey, which I honestly thought he won not that long ago. So it's just like Michael Johnson, inconsistent, trading wins and losses. Coming off a KO loss, 37 years old. Darrius Flowers, explosive, powerful, well-rounded. Do worry about the gas tank, but it's not like Michael Johnson's known for his gas tank. So I'm going to go Darrius Flowers. I'm going to say second round KO. I think Michael Johnson, this is going to be the fight where we really finally are like, okay, Michael Johnson, it's probably time to start thinking about retirement, because he's always kind of had a speed advantage against certain opponents, and I just don't think he's going to have that advantage against Flowers. Flowers was throwing some nasty shots against Jake Matthews. Jake Matthews, okay, he was able to move out of the way, defend, and mix in the grappling and end up getting a win with his grappling, get a submission. But Michael Johnson doesn't have the grappling in his back pocket. He's going to strike with him. And I think it's going to be a fun fight. I think it's going to be a competitive fight. I think it's going to be close up until the point I think Flowers is going to clip him with a big shot on the chin. I'm going Darrius Flowers, second round KO. Moving up on the card, we have Brad Tavares versus Gregory Rodriguez. Brad Tavares coming off a win over Chris Weidman. Lost before that, got KO'd by Bruno Silva. Lost before that against Dricus du Plessis, where he actually had a decent outing. Now that we know how good Dricus du Plessis is. You have Gregory Rodriguez coming off that win against Dennis Tululin. Fight before that got KO'd by Bruno Ferreira on short notice. Ferreira stepped in. I feel like Brad Tavares is so gritty. Maybe he could grit this one out and maybe, get it done. But I don't trust Brad Tavares' chin. He's been KO'd multiple times and he's been around for a while. He's 36 years old. He has decent takedown defense, and Gregory Rodriguez has really good takedowns and really good jiu-jitsu. But Rodriguez just has nasty power. And I don't think of Brad Tavares coming off a decision win against Chris Weidman. I think Gregory Rodriguez finishes Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman's leg looked horrible in that fight. It was like dragging it behind him, looked slow, came back from a catastrophic injury and a long layoff, and you're winning a decision. And I know he beat him up with leg kicks, but I don't see Brad Tavares going out there and beating up Gregory Rodriguez to a decision. I don't see him KOing Gregory Rodriguez. I think Gregory Rodriguez, he looks like he's 45, but he's actually only 31. Has good striking, has a reach and height advantage. And I think Gregory Rodriguez gets it done. It's just a matter of, does Gregory Rodriguez win it via decision or does he finish Brad Tavares? I know Brad Tavares got KO'd by Bruno Silva. That was 9 months ago. He survived against Dricus du Plessis. I'm going to go Rodriguez. I'm going to say he gets it done via decision. And I'm going to say maybe Brad Tavares squeaks out the first round. Maybe he wins the first round against Rodriguez. But honestly, I don't even know if I want to stand behind that. But I'm going to go Gregory Rodriguez via decision. I think he's a better grappler. I think he's a better striker. I think he has more power. I think he's more durable himself. And I think he has to worry maybe about the leg kicks of Brad Tavares. But I think he'll mix in the clinch, mix in the grappling, land the bigger shots. And I see him beating Brad Tavares either by decision or KO, but I'm going to go Gregory Rodriguez via decision. I'm going to say 29-28 decision. Maybe there's one close round that the judges give to Brad Tavares. Moving up on the card, the featured fight on the card, we have Ihor Potieria versus Robert Bricek. Bricek was supposed to fight somebody else. I forgot this quick who he was supposed to fight. Let me look. He was supposed to fight someone else, and it got canceled, and you have Potieria step in. It was Albert Duraev was supposed to fight Bricek, and I was going to pick Bricek against him as well. Potieria is coming off, honestly, a decent performance in his last fight. I know he lost, but against Rodolfo Bellato, he almost had him out of there, gassed himself out, and then got finished himself. Before that, got KO'd by Carlos Ulberg. So he's fighting decent competition. His only good win is against, it's not even a good win, it's against a dead corpse of Shogun Rua. So it's not even a good win. Lost 3 out of his last 4. Only won 1 fight in the UFC. He is 27 years old. You have Bricek coming in. This is his UFC debut. 17-5. He's looked pretty good. He's a striker, nasty power. Honestly, I'm wondering what Bricek's physique is going to look like. And I'm not usually obsessing over another grown man's body. But when I was watching some of his fights from the other organizations that he's fought in, I mean, he did not pass the eye test. Let's just put it at that. So I'm wondering what his kind of physique's going to look like coming in this fight. But I think he has a striking advantage. I think, 9 of his 17 wins are first round KOs. Potieria is not a very good striker, kind of wants to mix in the grappling. He's decently well-rounded. And so I'm going to go Bricek first round KO. I think he clips him on the chin. And Bricek has okay grappling as well. It's not like he's a guy, it's not like we've seen him. I know we haven't seen him against a lot of, elite level competition, but some of the guys he's fighting has some decent experience. He fought a guy 28-17. I mean, that's not great. The guy before that, or a guy after that, 16-5. He has decent grappling. I don't think Potieria is going to go out there and just maul him. And I think he has a striking advantage and a power advantage. And I think Potieria has been clipped on the chin one too many times. I'm going Robert Bricek via first round KO, catches him with a nasty shot on the feet and brutally KOs Ihor Potieria. Plus, Potieria is coming in on short notice. So you kind of have to take that knock against him as well. I don't think he gets it done. I think he gets brutally KO'd. And this is probably going to be his last chance in the UFC because this will be a 3-fight losing streak and losing 3 or 4 out of your last 5 if he loses this fight. So his back's against the wall. Maybe he pulls it off, but I'm going Bricek via first round KO. Moving up on the card, we have Dan Ige versus Andre Fili. This was supposed to be Dan Ige versus Laurent Murphy. Fili stepping in on short notice, which I don't know if that's a good move against Dan Ige. Dan Ige is one of the most underrated featherweights, honestly. He's coming off a loss against Bryce Mitchell. I thought he won that fight. Bryce Mitchell took him down, did nothing. I thought Dan Ige should have won 29-28 is I think what I had it scored. Beat Nate Landwehr to fight before that. Beat Damon Jackson, brutal KO before that. Lost to Movsar Evloev. Movsar Evloev is a top contender now. Fight before that, lost to Josh Emmett. I thought he beat Josh Emmett. So Dan Ige, I think he's very underrated for the featherweight division. Then you have Andre Fili coming off a win over Lucas Almeida. Low-level competition. Fight before that, lost to Nathaniel Wood. Got hurt badly in that fight. Had some moments himself, hurt Nathaniel Wood in that fight as well. Before that, has a split decision win over Bill Algeo. Before that, lost against Joe Anderson Brito, getting KO'd. And Dan Ige has excellent grappling and takedown defense. I know Bryce Mitchell was able to out-grapple him, but Bryce Mitchell is so relentless. And I think it's more of like a cardio thing from the constant pace of the wrestling. And Fili, his best weapon is kind of his ground game and his jiu-jitsu, but he doesn't have the greatest wrestling and takedown offense. So I think this is primarily going to be on the feet. Fili is decent on the feet, though. Don't get me wrong. I don't think Fili's bad on the feet, but I just think Fili, he's kind of chinny. He's been hurt. He's been finished multiple times. And I think Dan Ige has nasty power in his hands, and I just think Dan Ige is going to find a kill shot in this fight. So I'm going to go Dan Ige second round KO. I also don't like the fact that Fili's coming in on short notice. So I think this fight's going to be competitive. I think it's going to be fun. I see Dan Ige winning the first round. I see Fili trying to grapple. I see him shoot. I see him getting more desperate as the fight goes on. But I just don't think he's going to be able to get Dan Ige down and control him, especially considering he wasn't preparing for Dan Ige. He's stepping in on short notice. And, I know it was a couple weeks, but still, I think Ige has excellent takedown defense, good power in his hands, fast hands. And I see Dan Ige either winning this fight via decision, but I just think Fili's been clipped one too many times. His chin isn't the greatest. It isn't horrible. It's not like he has a glass chin. And Dan Ige has nasty power. So I see Dan Ige going out there, finding the chin, and just brutally KOing Andre Touchy Fili in the second round. So I'm going Dan Ige second round KO. And I'm pretty confident with Dan Ige getting it done in the co-main event. Moving up on the card, we have Jack Hermansson versus Joe Pyfer. A very important middleweight fight. Jack Hermansson's ranked right now. Joe Pyfer trying to catch a ranking. Be Joe Pyfer. That's what the UFC's thinking. It just goes to show you the difference between certain prospects where the UFC's kind of babying them, you know, and giving them kind of matchups to get experience, and then prospects who believe in themselves, but also the UFC believes in, because look at the level of opposition that they're giving Joe Pyfer. This is a big step up. I mean, to go from basically Abdul Razak Al-Hassan to Jack Hermansson, that's a big step up in competition. And Jack Hermansson's really good everywhere. I mean, he's a good grappler, good submission artist, good BJJ, decent striking, good footwork as well. He's coming off a loss in his last fight against Roman Dolidze. He was winning that fight. Made a mistake on the ground, ends up in a calf slicer and gets destroyed. Fight before that beat Chris Curtis. Chris Curtis came in on short notice, but Jack Hermansson showed his boxing skills in that fight and his footwork. Fight before that lost a split decision to Sean Strickland. It wasn't a split decision, but still, it's not like he got blown out of the water. Fight before that beat Edmund Shabazian. So Jack Hermansson's kind of one of these guys who's like a perennial top 15 middleweight, but it's just like, where does he beat Joe Pyfer? I'm wondering about Pyfer's cardio. I do wonder about, if it goes 5 rounds. But Pyfer has nasty power. He has good grappling. I know people are talking about, he beat Francis Ngannou's punch record. I don't believe that for 1 second. But he does have nasty power. KO'd Gerald Mearshart. Fight before that, KO'd Alan Amadovsky. Fight before that, KO'd Ozzy Diaz. And he overcome the nasty injury. He was on Dana White's Contender Series, broke his arm on a takedown, and came back. People thought maybe he would never be the same again. Came back, gets a win. Now he's in the UFC and he's gotten a couple wins under his name. Got 3 wins, and now he's getting a top 15 opponent. So we can tell he believes in himself. He's not just talking about top contenders. He's actually fighting them. And he's just very well-rounded, And I think the UFC picked out Jack Hermansson as, okay, this is who Pyfer can beat to get in the top 15. The UFC, one thing, and this should be a topic for a whole other video, but one thing the UFC is really good about is selective matchmaking, building certain contenders, and that's exactly what this matchup is. Could it backfire? Of course. Jack Hermansson is very good everywhere. Could he use his footwork and just kind of outstrike Joe Pyfer from range and maybe mix in the grappling occasionally? Yeah. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Jack Hermansson's hittable, and it's not like he has this amazing wrestling where he just goes out and ragdolls guys. And Joe Pyfer has shown decent wrestling, even out-grappled, Gerald Mearshart, not only in the cage, but also in a grappling match as well. So I think Joe Pyfer, too big, too strong, younger, much younger. I mean, you look at the age difference, it's an 8-year age difference. He's taller. Hermansson does have a 2.5-inch reach advantage. I think Hermansson's going to try to fight from the outside. Going to try to kind of use that same strategy he did against Chris Curtis. Just stick and move, throw combinations occasionally, and then hope maybe Joe Pyfer's cardio fails him. But I just think Joe Pyfer, too well-rounded, too powerful. And if he finds a shot on Jack Hermansson, I think he finishes Jack Hermansson. We've seen Jack Hermansson finished by Jared Cannonier. We've seen him KO'd before in the cage. And his best win is Kelvin Gastelum with like a knee bar. So I think that Joe Pyfer gets it done. I'm going to go Joe Pyfer 3rd round KO. I think Hermansson's going to be, have good reactions early and kind of avoid some of the big shots. But the reason I went with 3rd round KO for Joe Pyfer is I remember in the Chris Curtis fight, Hermansson won the first 2 rounds. Chris Curtis started to come on and land strong in that 3rd round. So I see Pyfer also trying to manage his energy, knowing that he's in a 5-round fight. So he doesn't find that kill shot early. Hermansson's moving quite well. But as the fight goes on, and Pyfer knows I only got 10 minutes left, and Hermansson knows, okay, now I got to start picking it up myself, but also he's starting to slow down, so the footwork isn't as good as it once was in the 1st and 2nd round. I see Pyfer catching him with a big shot. So I could see like the first 2 rounds, maybe 1 round goes to Hermansson, 1 round goes to Pyfer. Pyfer landed some decent shots and pressuring forward, and maybe not all that crazy, like exciting. And then I think in the 3rd round is really where it starts to pick up. And I see Joe Pyfer catching Jack Hermansson with a nasty punch and KOing him and propelling him into the top 15 of the UFC middleweight rankings. I just think Hermansson, if he wins this fight, he's going to have to catch Joe Pyfer in some type of like crafty submission off a takedown attempt. And I think Joe Pyfer's just too big and too strong. I think he'll be able to fend off the takedowns of Jack Hermansson. So Jack Hermansson's best avenue to victory is probably like playing that long game from the outside and hoping that Joe Pyfer's cardio doesn't hold up. But I think Joe Pyfer's cardio, I think he'll manage it well. He knows what a big spot he's in. And I think he finds that KO shot. So I'm going Joe Pyfer, 3rd round KO over Jack Hermansson. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And thank you so much for watching.